better daily, where we work hard in our minds, bodies, and our spirits to become 1% better every single day. Download the app and join our Betterment family at betterdaily.life to catch the video version of these podcasts. Here's your host and my dad, Alex Van Houten.
What is up, Betterment family? This is Alex Van Houten in Better Daily Live. Happy Wednesday. It's Wild Wednesday, which means we can do whatever we want, and you never know what is coming in today. I'm going to talk to you about last night's strength workshop. Our workshop was awesome. It's called All Around Strength. Those of you who could join me live, thank you for doing so. I'm going to link the replay to that workshop here for those of you who want to dive into strength. And this is a little bit of a different kind of workshop. I have in the past addressed things like muscular health. So talking about growing our muscles through resistance training. And I've also in the past covered the acute variables of strength training. We've covered things like cardiovascular development and power and injury prevention. We've covered a lot of different things. But what I wanted to do last night, and what I think we did, was talk about strength in a mind, body, spirit perspective. How to grow a stronger spirit, how to grow a stronger body, and how to grow a stronger mind. And I know that that sounds really esoteric, but we got granular. We had great discussions. We talked about very specific things that we're currently doing as a group, and then also what we as individuals can commit to this week in order to grow those aspects of strength in ourselves. And it was very productive and meaningful, and it was challenging to me too. So I hope you'll check that out. Good morning, John. Good to see you this morning. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the idea of the interplay, right? So for instance, we started with the strength of spirit, and there's a lot worth saying about that. I don't want to recap the entire workshop with you right here, but there are things that we can be up to that will strengthen our spirit. There are things like spiritual disciplines, for instance, in corporate practices, and those sorts of things that can strengthen the deepest parts of us, the sacred parts of us, the holy parts of us, the parts of us that are, you would almost say, are most integral to ourselves. And then as we grew out of the stronger spirit piece, we started talking about strengthening our body. And the point of strengthening the body is not necessarily just to be like, oh, I'm strong, I can shoulder press 500 pounds, which I can't. I can not even close. I'm pretty happy if I can put 155 over my head. With that said, your strength of body, your practice in strengthening your body, in many ways is a practice in keeping your physical from being an impediment to your spiritual. So I used the example in the workshop, and I'll use it again. There are times in my life where my neglect of upkeep for my physical self impedes things that are spiritually important to me. For instance, I really care to be a good father. This really matters to me. It's a deep part of what I believe God's doing in me spiritually, and also what I believe I'm ultimately here for, that the calling to be a good father is definitely heavy on me and important to me, right? However, there have been times where perhaps I didn't observe a very good sleep and wake time. And so I did not rest my physical body well. So my physical body is weak, and therefore I don't have the energy that I need or the wherewithal that I need in order to keep up with my kids in the afternoon when they want to play rough and tumble, right? And I'm not saying I'm perfect all the time. What I'm saying is that our physical bodies can become an impediment to what it is that we would like to be up to in fulfilling our spiritual dictates and callings and things that really matter to us, right? So we talked about how to strengthen our physical body and what it is that we can be doing in order to make sure that that's moving in a positive trajectory. And then we finished with the mind. And the mind is this thing. Some people conflate spirit and mind, right? So let me separate those just a bit. The mind is the words that we tell ourselves, the way we think, the ability to place our focus and attention on something. Good morning, Robin. Good to see you, man. And our mind can sometimes get in the way of our spirit too. You might have really desired to do something or known that it was important, but then you couldn't get out of your own head. Like your mind kept you in, like you're spinning your tires or spinning your wheels, right? This happens a lot in exercise practice, right? So somebody's spirit knows that who they see in the mirror needs some work. That there's some work that they could be doing for their physical body. Maybe they need to start a weight training regimen. Maybe they need to start doing cardiovascular exercise. Maybe they need to start feeding themselves differently, right? And so the spirit knows, I need to move forward. It's deep, it's visceral. You know it needs to happen, right? But your mind is like, I don't know where to start. What if I do this or what if I do that? Maybe you're just going to fail all over again. Blah, 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 blah. If your mind is not strong, then you can sometimes get bogged down in the self-talk, in the mind games that you play with yourself, or maybe somebody played with you once upon a time and you internalized those things. And so we talked about strengthening our mind and things that we're doing currently to strengthen our mind. For instance, it's really important to me on a regular basis to journal, because it helps me to list out my thoughts. It also helps me to clarify my mindset and to clarify what it is that I'm saying inside and make it articulable. And sometimes putting it on paper is like, wow, that needs work. Why would I say that? Why would I say that to myself? Why would I think that? How can I change this to be better? So like if your mindset around making a change is like, oh no, it's so cold outside. I don't want to be out there to do my cardiovascular work. It's like 26 degrees and windy. So gross. Instead, you might be able to approach that as, this is an opportunity to do something difficult. And maybe I'll find out that I'm stronger. Or maybe I'll find out it's really cold outside. But either way, I'm going to go find out something about myself. And that's a mindset switch, right? Oh my gosh, this thing's so impossible and difficult. Or wow, what an opportunity to learn. What an opportunity to grow. We dive into that in the workshop as well. So my hope for you, I hope that, Janet says, or you can go build some brown fat. That's right. Exactly right. It's cold outside. Brr, it's going to be miserable, but I'm going to be building some brown fat. So let's go take it on. You're welcome for that little mindset strengthening there. But that was the spirit of the workshop. And so if you weren't there, I hope you'll check out this replay. I'm going to post it in this post here, and you can listen to it if you can't watch or whatever. But there are several times throughout the workshop where I ask you to write stuff down. So you're going to want a pen and paper handy. This is not just I'm going to sit here and listen to this and maybe it'll be helpful to me. Like, you'll have to participate. And I hope that you find that meaningful and powerful. I want you to be strong of spirit, strong of body, and strong of mind. So all of those things, the deepest part of you, the physical part of you, the mind gamey part of you, I want all of those things strong and working for the purposes that you were put here for. Guys, this has been Alex Van Houten in Better Daily Live. Thank you so much for joining me on Wildcard Wednesday. Tomorrow is Word Thursday, and I can't wait to share with you some meditations on a cool word. Until then, it's just 1%. You got this. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me tonight. We're going to be diving into building strength. This is a workshop not just about the body, but also about the mind and spirit. And I hope that we'll all be able to walk away with maybe some tools and also some commitments that we can hold each other to and hold ourselves to when it comes to building strength in mind, body, spirit. Tonight's agenda is relatively simple. We're going to dive into a strong spirit, we're going to dive into a strong body, and dive into a strong mind. I hope this is more discussion than me talking at you, although if you need an encouraging word, I'm sure I'm full of several of those. So here we go. First, we're actually going to start with spirit. And so if you'll take just a moment to write these down, I'd love for you to write down 3 things that you're currently doing each week to be spiritually stronger. And I'll give you a moment to write those down. And I'll ask you to share, but I won't make you share. What I'd love to hear is we're in the same space. I'll give you just a few more seconds. Obviously, this might be very specific to you, something that might make you feel more spiritually strong or moving you forward spiritually. Might not be doing the same for me, and that is okay. All right. So I'd love to hear if you're willing to share one of them. What's one of the things that you're doing right now to make yourself spiritually strong?
I put in that, church or other relational things that keep you encouraged from, conversations and hearing
Yeah.
good information and studying and, like I said, just being encouraged by other people.
I love that. For you, is that more the corporate worship environment, or picking your content carefully, or both?
I mean, it's good to be in that environment. Just hearing the message is usually convicting, and but then being around people that are also walking it and serious and things like that, and
Right.
being able to actually encourage other people along with being encouraged, all that. And I'm pretty relational, so that's a big piece of it for me. And I mean, obviously you have your devotions or things like that, privately, but having those relationships really does make a big difference in being able to encourage others and be encouraged.
Yeah. Uh, Cultivating meaningful relationships was part of mine as well.
Yeah.
I take praise breaks during the day.
Oh, I love that. What's that mean?
That means to me that I've gotten into the habit since I've been under a big load for the last 3 months. I've gotten into the habit of stopping whenever it crosses my mind that I'm getting overwhelmed. I stop and thank God that I'm able to do the work He needs me to do.
Mm,
I like it.
I like that.
And sometimes it's just once a day. Sometimes it seems like it's every 5 minutes. I'm needing to stop and reinforce, hey, this is good. You're doing good work. You're good.
I love that.
Mhm.
There are definitely days like that. Reframe. This is a privilege and a good work.
That's right. I mean, that's what it takes for me.
Thank you for that. I like that you call it praise breaks too. That's a little beyond gratitude.
Oh, it's definitely praise breaks. That word, just to saying it like that to my own self makes it a good thing for me.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that.
I like that because it reorients your thoughts, because in order to praise, you have to start thinking on things that are good, right, true, and lovely. And that verse is such a beautiful thing, because when you praise, that's exactly where your focus is. It's on the goodness of God and all the amazing things that He does that you see, and all the things He does that you don't see. It's a moment where you open your eyes deliberately to that. I like that. But I kept mine simple. The weekly thing was kind of because these are things I strive to do daily, but sometimes weekly as far as connecting with other believers go. But I read my Bible, I pray daily, and I connect with other believers, people who 100% belong to Jesus. And when you connect with them, I guess that's what you meant by cultivating meaningful relationships.
Mm-hmm.
When you connect with other believers, it's such an encouraging, uplifting thing, and it strengthens you in a way nothing else does.
Right. Yeah. Pity the one who falls down and has no one to pick them up. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I said weekly because I'm setting the bar low for those of us who daily don't know what's going to hit them in the face 100 miles an hour. So,
Well, that's just it. You'll never know. So,
right.
yeah.
So gotta make it. So I said weekly. One of two things that I'm working on. I teach a Bible study on purpose because it keeps me honest with my own personal devotion. If I know I have to teach it, I will darn well do it. And so that's something that I do personally to grow, because I feel like it's a men's Bible study, so there are men in my community who want to understand the Bible and the etymologies of words and the original Greek and Hebrew better, and so I challenge myself to read up on that, and then it's fun when I have questions that I don't know how to answer, so I have to go find them out. So that's something I do to grow spiritually. And then lately, part of that Bible study is I'm going to teach on the Sabbath in like a week and a half, and I'm really bad at the Sabbath. The idea of taking time specifically to restore. And I say I'm bad at it. I'm actually good at it when I make the time. I'm really good at restoration when I make the time, but I'm working on making the time, and so that's something I'm practicing weekly right now. And for me, it's worth talking about maybe at a future date. But for me, the practice of Sabbath doesn't necessarily mean not doing any work from sundown on Saturday to sunup on Sunday, but backwards. You guys know what I'm saying. Anyway, for a 24-hour period, I didn't lift a finger or pick any wheat. That's not exactly what I'm saying there. It's the meaningful and intentional practice of setting aside time for restoration, rather than being so industrious all the time and missing out on some of the things that you need to slow down for. So those are some things I'm doing. So I ask because there are three things we're going to touch on here. I'm going to talk a little bit about idols. I'm going to talk from a spiritual perspective. I'm going to talk a little bit about bowing, and then I'm going to talk about some spiritual disciplines, and then we'll move on to the body. So first, for spiritual strength, it's important that we have our priorities straight. And this story comes directly out of Judges. If you're interested in looking this up later, Judges chapter 6. This is Gideon's story. And before God actually has a big plan for Gideon. He has an important work for him to do. However, it's so important that Gideon's heart and mind are in the right place and they're lined up. And so before he gets this charge, this mission, this message, any instructions even, he has to get rid of the things that are distracting both him and his family. And so this is from Judges 6. It says, "That night the Lord said to him, 'Take your father's bull and the second bull 7 years old, and pull down the altar of Baal that your father has, and cut down the Asheroth that is beside it. Build an altar to the Lord your God on top of the stronghold there, with stones laid in due order. And then take the second bull and offer it as a burnt offering, and the wood of Asherah that you shall cut down.' So Gideon took 10 men of his servants and did as the Lord told them. But because he was too afraid of his family and the men of the town, he did it by night instead of by day." So this is a biblical story about the removal of things that are distracting us, spiritually speaking. And our world is full of them. We're really good at building our own distractions too, right? And I'm sure each of you, when you were saying things that you do to make yourself more spiritually strong, a lot of that has to do with placing your focus in the right place and eliminating the things that are distracting you spiritually. And when I say spiritually, I mean to say the deepest parts of us, the most sacred and important parts of us. When Katie was talking about taking praise breaks, she's reminding the deepest part of her that it's a privilege and a gift to do what she's doing right now, no matter how stressful and difficult it is. And let me know if I'm saying that wrong, Katie.
That's it.
And similarly, me trying to practice this whole Sabbath thing, in the life of a young parent and a business owner, it's and a husband, and there's just so many things flying at me 100 miles an hour. So to separate myself from those things gives me the time and the space to remind myself why I'm doing what I'm doing, and to also to align those things appropriately. And so one of the questions worth asking here, because I don't think any of you have a actual idol in your backyard, and if you do, don't tell me, because I'm going to think you're really weird then. But but it's the appropriate question is, and you don't have to answer this out loud, but it's worth reflection. It's worth writing down. When I ask you to bring to mind anything that's distracting you from God, the thing that's most important to you, anything distracting you from God right now, and what might you be able to do to diminish the influence of that thing? I'm going to give you a minute or two just to reflect on that. You can write it down. I'm not going to ask you to share, but if something comes to mind that you want to share with the group, you're very willing and welcome to do so.
Well, that's very hard because it's like I get in my own way. I'm the most distracting thing.
Wow.
I mean, just being honest, I'm the most distracting thing.
Well, just tear yourself
I
down
agree
there,
with
Katie. I'm just kidding. I'm just
Whatever,
kidding.
dude.
No, I think that's good. I think that's an important thing to notice.
I agree with you, Katie. You know, it's I find my relationships can be my biggest strength and the best thing, and it can also be the biggest distraction and the thing that gets in the way of me putting first things first, because I enjoy the relationships, but it's real easy to have that become a distraction.
Yep. And do you find that you use that as a crutch so you don't have to stop and look? Oh yeah.
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
Big time. How fast do we text or
Yep.
Yeah, I guess nowadays, since it's so easy to just pick up your technology and instantly be connected to somebody, that it's a little harder sometimes to just sit with that.
It's very hard. And I've really learned this year to really take time to try to get in the habit of being quiet and not reaching out to others to make me feel better. Because I mean, there's times that that's appropriate, but it's too easy to just shoot out that text like, "Oh, what a crazy day," or and all it does is add distractions to their day too, and you end up with this just stream of negativity coming back and forth between each other, complaining or whatever. And so I really worked very hard to not do that. Sometimes successfully, sometimes not. Usually I pick a smart ass meme and send it.
It's a good way to get a chuckle and shut it down at the same time.
Exactly.
That was great.
I'm good at posting those once in a while on Better Daily.
And I appreciate them personally, but
I just like to have a good sense of humor, and so it breaks it up.
I know for me, especially at the start of the pandemic, when I wasn't really sure how my business was going to pan out and whatnot, I was very distracted by the idea of provision. It's one thing to take responsibility for your family, but good friends of mine can attest that I was thinking of very strange ways to shore up the potential catastrophe of the world, and all those things. It kind of brought me, in my heart anyway, it brought me to a lot of the writings from Exodus, where the Israelites are constantly admonished by Moses on God's behalf. Like, you're supposed to be trusting in him for your provision. He's got everything you need. He's taking care of all your issues, and yet you find something to whine about all the time. And obviously I'm paraphrasing, but it was a very convicting set of passages to me, and then
Yes.
Christ later echoing them. Look at the lilies of the field; they neither toil not or spin, and Solomon in all his glory is not arrayed as one of these. So do not worry about your life, what you'll wear, what you should eat. And I mean, it's easy to quote those things. It's another thing entirely to not make a God out of pursuing them. And as opposed to putting your trust in the right place. So that's something that as a dad I wrestle with.
One thing real quick is, my ex had been laid off multiple times during the length, of our marriage. And he was always, very stressed out every time it happened. And I remember just finally turning around and one day I said, we feed our kids at least 3 times a day. And I said, if every 5 minutes our kids looked at us and said, "You're going to feed me? You're going to feed me? You're going to feed me?" You'd be ready to smack them one, because, all we do is feed them. And I was
always
like,
eating.
if they didn't trust. And I said, God must feel like we're like little kids that he's feeding constantly. We're still like, "Are you going to feed us next meal?" He must just want to smack us one half the time.
That's great.
That seemed to help him step back and say, "Wow, he has provided, time after time." And we keep on, saying, "Well, you going to do it next time?" You must get frustrated with us.
It's remarkable how little we actually do need compared to how much we think we need, or at least that's something that I'm learning.
Yes, exactly. But anyway, that came to mind when you talked about that.
So another aspect of spiritual strength is overcoming this fear thing. And I kind of alluded to it in what I just confessed to you guys. But there's a story out of the book of Joshua, which is really interesting. And it mirrors something that Moses went through. So in Joshua chapter 5, this is actually before Joshua fights the battle of Jericho in the conquest to take the promised land that's been promised to the Israelites, right? So he's got, God's command at his back, but he's also facing these battles in which they're outnumbered and they're not the home team, right? And so in this story, this is verse 13, when Joshua was by Jericho, he lifted up his eyes and looked. Behold, a man was standing before him with a sword drawn in his hand. And Joshua went to him and said, "Are you for us, or are you for our adversaries?" And he said, "No, but I am the commander of the Lord's army, and I've come." And Joshua fell on his face to the earth and worshipped and said to him, "What does my Lord say to his servant?" And I love this because you would think he's going to give him some kind of instructions about the ensuing conflicts ahead, but he doesn't at all. He says, "The commander of the Lord's army said to Joshua, 'Take off your sandals, because the place that you're standing is holy.'" And so Joshua did so. And I find this story remarkable because one of the things that's really interesting about what they did in Joshua and then also Moses facing Pharaoh to let his people go, the initial step to overcoming fear was to actually bow before something that aligned awe and respect and admiration appropriately. And I said this recently in a Bible study. If a mouse is going to fight a larger mouse and the little mouse is scared of the big mouse, but then a cat walks in the room, suddenly there's no more fear of the big mouse because a cat's much bigger and much scarier, right? And in a way, there's this strange concept of in Psalms and Proverbs that says that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, meaning in a way that if our fears are aligned appropriately, or another way to put it is, if our life is bowed to the highest ideal, to the highest good, that is God, then what really do we have to be afraid of? And this is a part of spiritual strength, right? You guys are surely familiar with the verses from the New Testament that say, "The Lord has not given you a spirit of fear, but of strength, courage, and of a sound mind." And the question is, well, how do you get that if you're afraid? If you're afraid of providing for your family, or you're afraid of where your job's going, or you're afraid of tomorrow and how everything's going to pan out. And I think a question worth asking is, how do you renew your bow? How do you renew this? One of the reasons, Katie, when you said I'd take a praise break in the day, what it made me think of. You didn't know this slide was coming, but in my mind, that's a renewal of the bow. It's saying, and maybe you don't think of it that way, but it's a renewal of like, hey, I'm bowing to the highest good, and
Yes, to the
what
greater good.
right. And what really else can I be afraid of if that's what I'm up to every 5 minutes? But I'm curious, how do you guys renew your bow in the sense that you remind yourself who you fear, or what you admire and what you respect in the world, that that aligns you appropriately?
I don't think I purposely do that. I think I have to be knocked down in order to realize it.
That's so painful, but I've been there. Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Humbled. I guess I could just say, how are you humbled? Fighting tooth and nail the whole way. That's how I'm humbled.
That's something you should be looking to do. It hasn't crossed my mind that way yet. It's more I get knocked down in order for me to realize it. But that's a really good point there. Dang it, Alex.
I got two thoughts that came to mind that I wrote down.
Yeah, what do you got?
As for, I have to think about that one a little longer. That requires a little more thinking. But the two thoughts that come right to mind was recognize and honor the holy, revere that. And then remember who I am in Christ, because it's one thing to know where you come from, to remember who you were before Christ. But it's another thing to call to mind your spiritual markers, those peaks and plateaus on your journey and the low points, with Christ, and to call to mind where you're headed with all of that. Because when you keep that clear direction in mind, with a strong sense of identity of who you are in Christ, it really helps when you combine that with the daily Bible reading and the praying daily. And I don't know, it really does strengthen that.
What you're saying just lit up something in my head. You're so Joshua is bowing before the armies of the Lord, and it's almost like a what's the word? It's like a marker in his head of, I'm about to fight all these battles. We're about to be outnumbered in all of those things, but who's got my back? Like, who's really fighting this fight anyway? What's my backup look like? And I was thinking about that in terms of what you just said. Who was I before? And what has God done in my life thus far? And if I'm continuing to submit to that journey, that calling, then who knows where I'm going to end up. And I've had plenty of things to be afraid of before, and we're fine. I'm still here. I'm still standing. I know that's not necessarily a very spiritual song, but I resonate with it anyway. Thank you for sharing that. That's what made me think of while you were saying
I
that.
like that angels no nonsense, get your head in the game mentality. It's like, look, man, you're on holy ground. You take your shoes off, get your mind right before we focus on what's going on around you.
And the very next verse, chapter 6, is like, and then Joshua marched on Jericho. Like there's nothing in between. It's just, and here we go.
That's because that's the way it works. When you get your head in the game, when you get your focus where it needs to be, and you get your mind right, it gets easier to go where you need to go.
I love it.
I think one of the other ones is that verse, be still and know that I am God. And that's one that I come back to.
Yeah, me too. I love that.
I'm stubborn and bullheaded. You guys would have never guessed, but I'm just kidding. I am stubborn and bullheaded. I have to physically assume this posture in my life. And I renew this personally when I pray. Like, I make it a point to be physically in this position. I don't think there's anything magical about, I don't think my prayers are any louder to heaven necessarily in a kneeling or bowing position, but personally it's it's a humbling thing for me to physically assume a bowed position, and as opposed to being seated or standing. And for me, uh, my spiritual self is very embodied, and so what I'm doing with my body also reflects me on the inside. As I'm talking to you guys and I'm like moving my hands and stuff. I can't talk without, you know, this is called gesticulating. It sounds like a strange word, but it means to speak with your hands. I can't help it, it's just how it works. And similarly, if I'm bowed before God in prayer, then I'm actually bowing. And if I'm like, it bothers me to pray with you guys standing here. But if I bowed, you wouldn't be able to see me. So I renew my vow by assuming that state physically, and that's one of the ways I do so. So the last thing I'll say on the spiritual strength side of things, is a really, really cool book. If you guys are readers and or want to dive into the idea of different spiritual disciplines, there's a really, really good book called Celebration of Discipline, written by he's one of the spiritual giants from back in the 60s and 70s, important reformative movements. But he wrote a book called Celebration of Discipline. And in this book, I'm sure there are other books that try to do this, but I thought he did a fantastic job of weaving together a lot of things. And he breaks up the disciplines of the Spirit into three magisteria. There are the inward disciplines. These are the things that happen, that you can pursue to change you on the inside. There are the outward disciplines that change you on the outside. And then there are the corporate disciplines. These are things that you do with people. And I'll just read through them here, and I don't intend necessarily to speak on each one of these. It might be worth a workshop or maybe even a book study when we're done with the Bible study here. I'd love to take that on with you guys over the summer, perhaps. But these are inward disciplines. Meditation, that means to ruminate or journal on things that you're trying to work through or to make sense of. So like in Psalms it says, "Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands with sinners, or sits in the seat of the scornful. His delight is on the law of the Lord, and on it he meditates day and night," meaning it's on his mind. He takes time to think about it. Then there's the discipline of prayer, which we work to practice here, but it's the idea of bringing the things that other people need and that you need and or want to the Lord, and in entreating the Father. Abraham changed God's mind a couple times, which is a very, very strange thing when you think about it. And that is the discipline of prayer. And not only that, but you also change in the process. Fasting, which is the discipline of going without food so you can be filled with other things, which is really awesome. And then the discipline of study. This is shaping of the mind, which we'll talk about later when we get to stronger mind. Then the outward discipline, simplicity, not stocking up too many yachts under your umbrella. Don't worry, I don't have that problem. But simplicity, solitude. This is the art and the practice of being alone in the quiet, kind of as Janet was alluding to earlier. Not picking up the phone to text people sometimes when you're alone with your thoughts. The discipline of submission, which you might think of as obedience, when you know that God wants you to do something and you don't really want to do it, so you submit to that thing anyway. It's a difficult discipline. And then service. This is the discipline of sharing and helping those who are in need. As you have done to the least of these, so you have done unto me, said Jesus. And then the corporate disciplines. These are the disciplines of confession, that is, speaking things you'd rather not say out loud to people you are close to and trust, so that it can be out in the open, and so that the process of forgiveness can start. Worship, this is the practice of coming together, and it could be song, it could be reading. There's a number of things that happen in a worship setting. The discipline of guidance. I know some of you play a role of mentor to individuals, and vice versa, you submit yourself to intelligent guidance. And then the discipline of celebration, which I think is fun that Richard Foster ended with that one, because we could all use a little more dancing, I think, personally. And to think of that as a spiritual discipline is fun too. So if you haven't explored that book, highly recommend it. I've actually got a PDF copy of this book because the copyright has since been released since this book came out. I want to say about 40 years ago is when it came out. But I have a PDF copy of that in Better Daily, and if you want a copy or the link or whatever, you can find it in the folders, or just shoot me a message. I'll send you the link. I like to hold a book, though. I don't like reading via PDF. So, we talked a lot about spiritual matters, and I'd love to invite you to write down one thing that came to your mind over the past bit of conversation that you're willing to commit to this week in order to become spiritually stronger.
I'm willing to commit to something.
What do you got?
I got to get through Deuteronomy. I've been putting it off. It took me forever to get through Numbers. So this week I'm going to get through Deuteronomy. I can do it.
You can do it. Deuteronomy is way more fun than Numbers.
Numbers was awful. I love God's word. Don't get me wrong. And I did have fun looking up the different raiments and, and I got to thinking about how God he knows us so well, and he knows we are a people of ritual. So he knew what we were going to need. And that's why it was so detailed, because we need that. We're goofy that way. But I can get through Deuteronomy this week.
You can do it. You can do it.
I can Deuteronomy it.
Wow. If anybody asks where I get it. Thanks for that. That's good. Katie, I think I'm gonna steal your praise breaks. Mine might involve music, though.
Okay. I was gonna say nothing is coming to mind for me. So that's a problem. Because I shouldn't sit here, I shouldn't be thinking like I have what I need right now, because that's not true. So I'm going to spend the week thinking about how I can be stronger in spirit. I don't know that answer, but I need to find.
That's a good commitment. I think that's the discipline of meditation right there, is like, hey, I'm not sure. But I am going to think on this because it matters.
That's what I can commit to.
I love it. Thank you. Appreciate your honesty too.
And I'll commit to making sure I get at least one chapter every morning before I get into the rest of my day and get distracted and get started off on the right foot.
Do you have a particular book you're going through, or will you decide later?
I'm part of a women's Bible study for the first time in my life, and they're going through Acts.
Oh, cool.
And I missed the first couple months because I wasn't going to church there. So I actually wanted to go back to the beginning because they do have workbook that they gave me that, I missed. So I thought it might not be bad for me to actually go through a little bit of that myself.
Yeah, a little catching up to do.
Yeah, but it is pretty interesting,
It's so cool how the early church exploded and then all the work that went into the to the spreading of the apostles' teaching. It's such a cool story.
It is. It makes you look at things from a different angle. Like, when it's easy to, when you grow up in the church, to just be like, oh yeah. And then just really been looking at things from a different angle lately. Of, well, why do I believe this? And why is this important? And asking a lot more questions.
Yeah. I love it. Thanks, Janet. So, moving on to the body. Given that we spend a lot of time in Better Daily on the body, this should be easy. Write down 3 things that you're doing right now to be physically strong. I can't stop. I'm just kidding.
God.
Deadlifts, pull-ups. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Anything
Hey,
you
what
guys
were
are
you
willing to
committing
share?
to this week? Alex, what were you committing to this week for
I was committing to
spiritual needs?
Katie's praise breaks, but I said I'd probably incorporate some music. Like
Okay,
I'm
gotcha.
gonna have to play the song to get in the zone. Get in the
I was
praise
writing them down
zone.
so I could pray over them. Sounds good.
I might even dance. So if you guys hear about me getting kicked out of a coffee shop, that's what happened. It says in Acts, Janet, that the people surrounding the new believers thought they were drunk, and the apostles were like, "It's 9 a.m. Nobody's drinking
Yes.
here."
That's funny.
Like that's in the Bible. It's pretty good.
Yes. We just had the discussion that I, try to be pretty intentional about, not drinking. I'll have a drink or two socially, but, really not at home, and things, taking very intentional breaks just so it doesn't become a habit. And I was like, just as soon as I said, that's it, no more for the week. And, look, it's margarita day.
There's always something.
Not
right?
doing it.
That's a great. So physical strength, like I said, we've spoken a lot about it in Better Daily, and I don't want to blow over this. The title of the workshop was strength, and I have at length. You guys have been present for it. I'm sure at different intervals. We've at length talked about growing muscle. We've at length talked about training our cardiovascular system. At length talked about weight training specifically, and even nutritional components of that. I don't want to recap those seminars necessarily, but I think it's worthwhile when we're talking about strengthening our spirit and strengthening our body, strengthening our mind. It's important to note that no matter how strong your spirit is, there are things in our physical body that can be an obstruction, right? So I have found personally for myself that my spirit is willing, but my flesh indeed is weak, as Paul would say. And there are times when my spirit is open and excited and strong and ready to be around for my boys, but perhaps because I didn't take good enough care of my body, I didn't get enough rest, I didn't feed it well, I didn't exercise appropriately, my energy level's standing in my way. Or there's a pain that is nagging and brutal, and maybe there's something I could have done about that. Sometimes not, but sometimes there is. And so physical strength is important because oftentimes it can be an impediment or an excuse for some of the strength that we have elsewise not to come out. And there's probably more worth saying about that, but there are really 3 things worth tackling here. Just 10,000 foot view. First, your physical strength really hinges on your metabolic process, your metabolism. And you could think of this as something that you strengthen through cardiovascular exercise. And so I have a picture of one of my favorite places in the world right here. This is the incline. This is the Manitou Incline. And this is in Colorado Springs, right next to Colorado Springs at the base of Pikes Peak. It's a mile of stairs with 2,000 feet of elevation gain. So it's just like a stairway to heaven. Like, you can see it there. It cuts all the way up, and that's actually the false top. Once you get to there, it keeps going. You're like, oh no, I thought I was at the top. Like, ugh. But the reason I put this here is because one of the ways that you grow metabolic strength is by doing something that makes you want to quit. So, I want to challenge everybody. Something, if you're not already doing it, you need to face something every week physically that makes you want to quit. And it doesn't have to be 40 minutes of wanting to quit, which is what the incline is. You get about 4 minutes in and you're like, whose stupid idea was this? And the only way out is to keep going, because you don't want to be the poor soul who turned around and had to go back down. You got to finish. But my encouragement to you, and then something worth thinking about, is, have I done something this week that physically made me want to quit? And I don't mean like, maybe if you have joint pain and stuff, putting on your clothes makes you want to quit. I don't mean that. I mean from an endurance perspective, that I'm breathing hard, my heart's working hard, everything in me wants to stop, but I'm not going to stop. And it only has to last for a couple seconds for it to matter. And maybe you do something that's longer than that, but Katie was telling me about a warrior sculpt class, which is a pretty brutal cardiovascular intensity class. And like, it sounds like that does that for you, Katie. It puts you in that place where, like, I really could quit. Everything in me wants to lay down on the floor. She says
people do. They walk out every week.
People are out. They're like, I'm gone, man. She's still trucking. And for me, there's a hill. Like, you guys are probably sick of me talking about this stupid hill next to my house, but I run this dumb hill once a week. It's a 4-mile run. And I get 2 miles in, and then I turn around and come back, and I'm going up the hill to start the next 2 miles. And every time I'm on that hill, I don't want to be on that hill. I'm like,
It's brutal.
I'd really love to stop, but I'm going to go faster because I'm a glutton for punishment. But that is how we make our metabolism stronger, is by visiting that place that our body wants to quit, but we push through that anyway. And so that's from a cardiovascular perspective, that would be a physical strength piece. And there's, we could do lighter cardio and stuff, but given what I just said, are you, and you don't have to answer this out loud, but are you at least once per week coming to a place where you'd really like to quit, but you don't?
Mm-hmm.
Physically.
Definitely.
Don't get me wrong. We've all been there. We've all been there mentally this week, I'm sure, but physically.
Yes.
Awesome. I'm all about the hills, man. The hills do it for me. Nowhere to go but up. I did this to a client recently who wasn't doing his cardio homework, so I took him to my hill. He's been doing his homework, so we won't have to do that anymore. Then there's physical strength.
I think I've seen that hill. Hill by you, I've seen that. That's worse than Boot Hill for sure.
It's awful, man. It never ends.
That's all right. I ain't ready for that hill yet. I'm still doing Boot Hill.
That's good. The Boot Hill's a good one too. I think that was the first hill that I did that with. I was probably like 13 or 14 the first time I ran that bad boy. Then there's muscle. So when you think strength, you don't usually think cardiovascular work, but I hope that I made a case for you in that moment that you want to quit but you don't. That's adaptive. That creates mitochondrial density, that opens up your capillaries, that increases the stroke volume of your heart. It's a very, very powerful moment. And then the same thing goes for muscle. At least once a week, and I hope more than that, but at least once a week, are you coming to a place where your muscle groups want to give out? but you keep going anyway. So like for instance, let's say you're doing shoulder press. It's just an exercise like this. You don't even need very heavy weight. I mean, I like to do it with heavy weight because if I can hit that point at about 8 to 10 reps, I'm really happy with it, right? And there's some adaptations that go along with it. But if you go lighter weight, you just have to do 20. And you're like, oh, there's that, it burns. Ugh, I don't know about this. And you do a couple more. That's where you start to create the muscular adaptation of physical strength. Now, I'm not going to split hairs here and talk about power and endurance and strength because there's a lot to be said about that. But if resistance training isn't a part of your current program, that's important. And I would say you need at least 2 bouts of weights a week if your physical strength is not going to be an impediment to what you're doing on a daily basis. Some of us are more gluttons for punishment, so more than 2 times a week. Bring it on. But lastly is nutrition. Physical strength really hinges on whether or not we're getting our building blocks. And I'm sure you are all sick of me telling you to eat enough protein, but I'm going to say it again. Eat enough protein. Did you hear me, Janet? Did you hear me, Mom?
I'm pretty good.
Did you hear me, Katie? Okay. Eat enough protein, please.
Arjun, if I listen to you, is a different story.
I am pretty good about my protein. I will say my goal is to get at least 100 grams a day, and I'm usually pretty close to that. So
Awesome.
it's yeah.
Awesome.
So I really spread it out throughout the day to make sure it's it's varied and it's so my body can actually process it.
I joke that you guys are sick of me saying it. The reason I say it is because your training creates adaptations. The protein you eat gives you the building blocks you need to recover from those adaptations. So if you are facing something that makes you want to quit, cardiovascularly speaking, or if you push your muscles past the point they can currently handle and they have to grow back stronger, then protein's going to allow you to adapt and recover from that. Otherwise, what's going to happen is instead of becoming physically stronger, over time you'll become physically weaker because it breaks you down rather than builds you up to do that. So, right, one thing that you're willing to commit to doing in order to become physically stronger. I don't even want to say this out loud. I'm committing to no social media during my resistance training and no work. Like it's really easy to pick up my phone during rest periods, and I need not to do that. So if I text any one of you or I message you on Better Daily, ask me if I'm... Did you do this between your deadlifts? No, I didn't. I'm going to hold up my end of the bargain here. I generally work out between the hours of 9 and 11, so you won't hear from me between those hours.
One thing I'll commit to, I'm currently running twice a week and going to the gym at least 2 or 3 times a week to lift, but I'm committing to adding at least 1 new lift a week.
Oh, great.
We usually do, our deadlifts and squats and bench press and military press. And so I'm going to commit to doing at least something different, at least once a week.
I love it. Single leg press, thrusters, box jumps.
I tried that pistol squat. I thought I was strong until I tried that. Holy crud.
That's a hard one, man. That's a humbling lift.
I had to get back to your beginner idea and get a chair under my butt.
It's funny, if your muscles aren't used to it, it just gives out and you just fall on your butt. You're like, what in the world?
And I do like weighted lifts all the time. I mean, at one point I was doing, heavy weights on my shoulders and doing squats. And I thought, oh, I should be able to do this. Not.
I love it.
So that might be something I'm working on this week.
Awesome. Katie, are you going to stick with your warrior sculpt?
I've taken it several times already, but I don't know, maybe I've been thinking that I need to set aside some time at least once a week and practice balancing. And that takes a lot of strength, body and mind for me on balance. So yeah. I'm going to commit to adding tricks and balances back into my routine.
Cool. I hope it's just as much fun as it sounds.
Tricks and balances, it's so fun.
Nice. You got anything, Mom?
I'm just gonna keep on keeping on doing what I'm doing. I let my 5,000 steps a day slip a little bit because of pain and just it's been a rough month. But I'm working on getting that back up. I walked it was over 2 miles yesterday. And I hit Boot Hill, so I'm ahead of the game now.
There you go.
Yeah, just keep on keeping on. My cardiologist told me not to add no weights until I get that stupid echo, whatever she wants me to get.
Yeah. Don't need to increase your intra-abdominal pressure any.
No, but I'm still I'm doing good there, so I'm still making progress.
Well, last but not least, then. What are 3 things you're doing right now to be mentally strong? Personally, I'm guarding my sleep time because I become very mentally weak without adequate sleep. I'm making it a point to journal daily, it's good for me. It helps me organize my thoughts and think more clearly. And I am actively avoiding all news of political nature at the moment. And that's keeping me mentally strong. If I need to read an article or something, that's fine. But I've had podcasts that I've cut out of my life on purpose. Anybody care to share anything they're doing to stay mentally strong?
The easiest one for me to whip out.
Good.
I am a member of 2 book clubs on purpose because one is generally, it's the Sisters Club, which is all yoga ladies. And so it's all those types of books that make me think of stuff I wouldn't just sit around and think about. And the other is could be anything from a self-help to a trashy novel, and that is just as fun for me to read. And my daily meditation keeps me very strong and level-headed. And I've developed the discipline of being able to say to my employees or whoever, you know what, I can't stop right now to hear what you're saying. My head is too full. I can't talk to you right now. I'm going to have to come back and see you in a little while, because if I try to do what they're needing me to do, I'm not going to be any good. They're going to be frustrated. I'm going to be frustrated. So I've learned the discipline of being able to say, I can't do this right now.
Nice. Those are great. Thank you for those. That's awesome.
Three of the things that I do is, I listen to several different podcasts. A lot of them have to do with, obviously yours, and they have, cleaning up your mental mess and things like that. And it just really gives you a different perspective on certain things, and it helps you, be more intentional about, about some of the things you're doing to heal and to move forward. The other thing is I take social media off my phone during the day. I delete the apps so I can't be tempted to hit them. So first thing in the morning, I'll do my happy birthdays, I delete it off. And then last thing at night, when my brain's mush anyway, I'll go back on and, do the mindless scrolling when my brain's completely spent anyway. But during the day, it's off. And my goal this week actually is to even cut down further, even phone time, just put it away from me during the day. As much as possible. And so that's something that I try to do. And then, I do have a therapist too that, as I'm finding things, I have somebody that I'm working with that I can say, hey, I heard this, or I'm thinking of that, or, how do I process this, or I'm stuck, So that's three of the things I've been doing.
I love that. Thank you. Good. Mom, what are you doing to be mentally strong?
I
call your mom.
Oh, and you call my mom.
Hey, you're always. Well, I love that when you get a hold of me. You only call me once. You text me every now and again.
Yeah, I reach out to you.
Yeah, I like that though. But to stay
too.
mentally strong, I decompress often, and that involves a lot of different things. Like I do take moments of praise out. I do take moments to, refocus, reorient, and stuff like that. So whatever the moment calls for, because sometimes you have to decompress on the fly. You don't always got a moment to go to another room and just let that go. But and then the biggest thing is staying connected to the vine, drawing my strength from the Lord, and keeping myself centered there, and keeping myself accountable to the people around me, and checking in with them often, because this stage of life I'm at, it's easy to feel purposeless and not, and just get kind of disconnected. It's easy to do that. So I don't want to do that. So, those are three things I try to do to stay mentally strong.
Yeah. I imagine it's easy to, it's effort not to be isolated. And I don't mean that just for you. I feel similarly, even in a world where I'm constantly interacting with people. It's effort on my part not to be isolated in that. So I'm going to take a slightly strange approach to this. One of the things that I think are important for mental strength is the words that we say to ourselves, that inner language that we have on the inside, and the language that we speak on the outside. So here in the group and in a different seminar, I've talked about a growth mindset. This is just the reframing of the way that we talk to ourselves. Instead of, I'm not good at this, what am I missing? Or I give up. And instead we could say, I'll use a different strategy, or it's good enough, or is this really my best work? The way that we frame these things, I find it really helpful to think of how I would say this to a child. And I know that's because of the phase of life that I'm in, but I tend to be kinder to a child and more invested in their growth than I am with my own self. And and so I catch myself on a regular basis saying weird, stupid stuff that I just need to change. You know, when somebody says, "Hey, how was your week?" If I go, "Oh man, it's so busy," I kind of want to just like smack myself right then and be like, "Stop that! Stop it! Say something better! Dang it!" Like, because it's so easy to just say that. It's difficult to get across something meaningful and something that might actually build me up as a result of saying it out loud. So developing a growth mindset is part of changing the way we speak, both to ourselves and in the outside world. And my challenge to you guys is to catch yourself in some of the phrases that you say a lot that aren't meaningful, either to yourself or to other people. Like, "Oh, I can't do this, I can't do this, this is driving me crazy, I can't," shut up, stop it. Let's say something else. We can do that. It's very possible. It's very possible to come up with a better sentence, even if it's not completely honest right now. "I can't do this, I can't do this." You can do this. You kind of have to do this. Like, so wrap your head around it, kid. We're moving on. Or something along those lines. I know I'm being silly about it, but this is really important. As silly as it sounds, I know you guys know that uh, the words we tell ourselves and the words we say out loud carry power, and the more often we say them, like I joke, we eat 3 times a day, or maybe more than that, depending, and what default we have in our nutrition can really change things over the long haul, because we do it every day, right? But we say a lot of words to ourselves all the time, like way more than we eat. And being a good steward of that self-talk is important. And being a good steward of the speech that we speak to other people is important. I have relationships in my life where we speak authentically, but we're really careful about what we say because we care about the conversation. Like we care to say what we mean, if that makes sense. And I find that it's helpful in my coaching practice, and it's helpful in my own practice to notice these things. So again, my challenge to you is notice times in your day when you're saying things that aren't very constructive, and challenge yourself. Either whether you're saying it out loud or saying it to yourself, what am I saying? Just write it down. Like, wow, would I say that to my own kid? Katie, don't answer that. I'm just kidding. Katie and her son have a fun relationship, so they'll say just about anything.
Pretty much.
But when you're thinking about like a smaller version of your child, perhaps, not all of us have grown kids yet, but the idea being, if I was saying this to somebody that I wanted the best for, how would I say it differently? How would I encourage? How would I build up rather than tear down? So that's my challenge to you, is when you're thinking about that self-talk, try to identify a phrase or two that you do that. For me, I have vehemently opposed the phrase, "I'm very busy." I don't want to say it to my kids. I don't want to say it to people who ask me how I'm doing. I don't want to say it even to myself. I want to check myself and be like, if I'm really busy and productive things are happening and they're meaningful, how can I get that across better? And I'm still working on that. I don't have the answer, but I'll commit that I'll figure it out to you guys. and then lastly, I know I'm a bibliophile. Like, I know that, I have a whole Word Thursday on the Shortcast devoted to meditations on particular words and stuff. I love words. I think they're wonderful, but I do think there's power in them. And so another challenge here that might help with your mental strength is to start owning and embodying words. Learn new words and find out what they mean, and have some fun with them, because You could say it's very raining outside, or you could say it's pouring, because that's cool. And somebody's being competitive, they're cutthroat, and that person's kind of a punk and they're cheap, so they're stingy. I'm joking here, but at the same time, I'm not, because words like integrity, courage, grace, this Paul said, and Mom, you quoted it earlier, but Paul said in the New Testament, whatsoever things are pure and good and gracious, think on these things. And different translations say it differently, but what we say, Jesus would tell you, it's not what goes into a man that defiles him, but what comes out. And that I want us to get a handle on those things and find them important and meaningful. So I know we're a little past time here, and I want to be respectful of your guys' time, but a question worth pondering is, how can you improve your self-talk? How can you improve your self-talk? Personally, this is just as simple to me as writing it down.
That's what Better Daily's been really helpful with me there, because my self-talk is, come on, you old bat, you can get up this hill. I mean, you're not like super old yet. I mean, I really don't talk nicely to myself. But as we went through a couple of the Faithful 40s, I was very, very conscious of what I was allowing myself to think. I was really taking a rein on those thoughts, because I was shoring up my defenses, wanting to make sure that I gave myself every possible opportunity for success. And I knew that it was not just one success I was shooting for, it was success in a lot of different areas. So I had to stay focused while, going about shoring up those defenses to achieve the purposes I wanted to achieve. And self-talk was a big part of that. And being able to, because I've been kind of using Better Daily like a journal. It's a safe place to do that. With you guys, with Janet, with KT, I've learned from you guys so much, and it's been a beautiful experience. So I feel very privileged there. So using it like a journaling moment, but also holding myself accountable to you guys for the way I'm talking to myself, because I would say something very differently to like one of you guys in Better Daily if you had faced a discouraging moment than I would to myself. I mean, I would be very harsh with myself. So it's been a good experience. I'm really thankful for y'all. I hope you know that.
Thank you.
Thankful for you. You keep us on point too.
I think it's cool because like sometimes we don't see ourselves as admirable as maybe somebody else might. And getting to know you guys and understanding some of the obstacles you've faced and how you've approached those things forthrightly, and even in some of your failures, despite all that, you keep putting one foot in front of the other anyway. When you admire that in somebody, you speak to it differently than sometimes you knowing all of your faults and having to live with yourself every day. And maybe you don't admire yourself so well. And I don't mean to say admiring yourself in a prideful way, but I mean, perhaps you wouldn't show yourself the same level of love and care in the way that you speak. And so being able, I think you brought up a really good point there, being in this community where you see admirable people, not perfect, but admirable, taking the steps that they can take, it changes the way you speak to the world and also changes the way you might speak to yourself.
I always feel God pushing on my heart, speak life in all the things that you do. That's where I'm at right now. I want to speak life into situations in the lives of the people that I love, the people that I encounter, because there's a lot of death being spoken. I want to be the one that speaks life.
Well said.
I find it's real easy for me to get in a loop where, I'm just sort of in a fog, and to intentionally say you have to get out of that. I actually had, a friend I went over and I was like, oh, it's such a fog. And knock it off. Stop saying it. He's like, that's enough. And it's what I need to hear, and so I stopped saying it to myself too.
I love it. He just needs a squirt bottle, right? I'm in a fog. Psst, psst, psst.
Yeah.
What was that for?
Yeah, he
You said it
definitely
again.
will call me. He'll call me to account real quick if he hears something that's not helpful.
I just want to point out a squirt bottle holds a whole new light on accountability. Just saying.
Yes.
Fun though. I like it.
Yeah.
Well, we've already mentioned this, but Katie brought this up in the spiritual place, and I think the idea of praise goes deeper than gratitude. So I don't want to conflate the two, but the idea of taking a catalog of your blessings is slightly different, because she was talking earlier about being thankful in this moment that this opportunity is in front of her, and changing the paradigm. Like, hey man, there's a lot of things I could be up to right now, but this is the work that's in front of me, and I'm privileged to do it. And Katie, I've added a whole bunch of words to what you said earlier because I'm very verbose. So thank you for the very simple way you added a lot of meaning to this for me. But gratitude is is more like I mean, you can feel it. You can take that spiritual approach to gratitude, but it's also taking a moment just to say, like, here's all the reasons life is good right now. And Woodrow M. Kroll said, concentrate on counting your blessings, and you'll have little time to count anything else. And I think that's very well said. One of the ways that we can be more mentally strong is to identify those things that we do have, that we have to be thankful for. And I have found personally that the more I've done this in my life, the less material those things become. It's really cute to ask your kids what they're thankful for when they're this young, and try to explain what gratitude means, because they're thankful for their toys, and they're thankful for their house, and they start becoming thankful for people. And then I don't know when it happens, but in my life, you start becoming thankful for, like yesterday, I got to take them to a pond and we fished. We didn't catch a single fish. We got to see a catfish. But there was a moment where they were playing, and I just could not have been more grateful for the moment. It was just like a pause, like a still frame in time where life just doesn't get any better than that. And it's a second. It was a tiny moment where everything was good and beautiful, and I wish I could just rest in that. And so I did. I didn't cast my pole. I'm just sitting there watching them play and scare all the fish away and skip their rocks and giggle and play in the mud. And I'm like, man, that's good. And I think that it doesn't take long, but it's a powerful mental discipline to say, hey, man, whatever else comes this way, we got to do that today. And that was really cool. So, but gratitude is a really powerful tool in this whole mental strength process. And I was curious how you guys count your blessings. For me, I count them as my boys are growing. I'm just trying to like capture those moments and enjoy them. How are you guys counting your blessings right now?
Well, I try to remember them in prayer every day. And that's how I count them and remind myself, because I have to think of what they were.
Mm-hmm.
So I have it's the way that I pray. There's a certain time when I acknowledge the many blessings of the day or just in general. I have a blessings section of my praying.
Good. That's a good practice to be in.
I find any time that, I discuss something that's hard, I always couch it with, I'm very blessed, and we'll put out, three examples of where I'm really blessed in my life. And, but this is really hard at the moment, but it's just part of a conversation. It's like, look, we're all going through this, not complaining. It's not victim. It's just, discussing it with somebody. But I always try to say, look, I'm super blessed, and I'll name a few areas that I feel blessed in, just to, keep myself in the right mindset.
Mm-hmm.
I try not to be like the Israelites complaining in the wilderness. I try to see the positive things, because I know that there are so many things that God does in my life
Yes.
that that I miss, because there's things I see him actively doing and ways he's, actively responding to me and trying to get my attention and getting me to respond to him. I mean, I see all that, but I don't know. I'm old. I lost my train of thought. But that song comes to mind. Count your blessings, name them one by one.
Mm-hmm.
So I deliberately call those to mind too, like KT and like Janet.
Tell you, there's times that God allows us to see how much His hand protects us, and we just don't. There's so many times it would blow our minds, with fear if we saw it constantly. But
It really would.
And I remember standing on when I would walk into work, there was a car accident right at the corner as I was standing on the corner, and just realizing that if one of those cars had bounced, it could have easily had hit me. And just stopped and said, thank you, Lord. Like just walking into work on a city street, we forget how fast something could happen, just out of a car accident or a blown tire or something. It's just like, we don't even see the blessings that, like I said, he'd have our minds fried if we got to see everything he protected us from every day.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. That is definitely true.
I'm constantly telling Gabriel, once upon a time, mankind lived in caves and were constantly afraid of being eaten. And he's 6, and it's so funny because he'll say that, we'll make something, and Kristen will be like, that tastes pretty gross. And Gabriel will go, would you eat it if you were starving in a cave?
That's like my little kids from China.
Yeah. I remember that. But so anyway, it's so, man, it's just mind-boggling to think of. I mean, what a blessing it is to be able to spend time with you guys right now. Like, Zoom didn't exist 10 years ago. It's weird and wonderful that we can have this conversation on what day is it? Tuesday night? I don't even know what day it is. Look out. On a Tuesday night like this with people like yourselves. The last thing I'll mention here is just rest. So one of the pieces of our mental strength is rest, recovery. And that looks different for each person. I found a bunch of different pictures of people in hammocks in different places. I love the kid with the baseball cap. He's like, I'm out. Peace. I'm gone. Yep. The couple right there on the bottom left, that's not real. If you've ever tried to share a hammock that small with somebody, you're not falling asleep. You're trying not to fall out of it the whole time. So anyway, but we all rest in different ways. This is not just sleep. This is what we do for restoration. And like for me, rest looks like a fasted hike early in the morning with music and waterfalls. And Katie, I know for you, rest looks like a day in the yoga room. And maybe there's other ways that we like to rest, but this is part of our mental strength, our mental fortitude. If you're constantly spending your bandwidth and you're not doing something to recharge it, you will eventually fizzle out and it'll chip away at your mental strength. It's kind of like the same idea as training your cardiovascular system, lifting weights, and eating enough protein so that you're recovering. Similarly, getting enough restfulness. And I'm still working on this. This is a very difficult phase. I imagine every phase of life is difficult, but having young children is a difficult phase of life to find rest, because you can't say, hey, guess what, guys? We're going to rest today. And that means everybody's going to climb all over Dad until he fights with them. That's what that means. Mm-hmm. So if you guys wouldn't mind, as we're wrapping up this evening, write down one thing that you're willing to commit to this week in order to become mentally stronger. And then we'll call it a night.
That one was easy for me.
What you got?
Well, with menopause, I'm so dang scatterbrained. I just want a calm, quiet mind. I need to practice some mindfulness. I need to I need to spend time breathing, just breathing and being, and not even thinking about my pain. I need that. I need that. So I'll figure out a way to do that.
Thank you for that.
Along that line, I think I'm going to make sure I'm tackling my time management first thing in the morning to really understand what I'm trying to get done during the day. It's very easy for me to just sort of bounce from reacting to one thing to the next and not be very intentional. And that's something that I'm constantly having to work on.
It's
And
easy
it
to get
is-
swept away in the day.
Yeah, mentally, you don't feel very good. But at the end of the day, if you haven't been more intentional at some point.
You guys ever notice that sometimes intentional looks like manic behavior? Intentional sometimes occasionally looks like manic behavior.
Yeah.
I'm writing it down so I can check it off. No,
Yes.
it wasn't on my list, but it's there now.
I'm like super productive.
I'm committed, and I have to commit to this weekly. That's this phase of life I'm in. But I'm committed to going on a hike this week, spending some time by myself. It doesn't have to be long. 2 hours is about what I need, but I'm committed to that.
I got a challenge for you for this hike you're going to do this week.
Oh dear. What do you got?
Okay, you got to go on the hike like you're me.
What does that even mean?
Think about what I do whenever we go on a hike. What am I doing?
I don't know.
I'm picking stuff
no,
up, I'm
I can't hike
looking
like
at
that. Shut up. This.
Well, it would break the monotony of the hike up. I'm telling you.
I'm out there for restoration. That would drive me crazy.
Yeah,
Not if it put you in a cool frame.
I don't think he's looking for a Diet Cherry Coke on his hike.
Hey, I can't do that anymore. God done got me on this. He trumped every one of my little baby arguments, and they changed the formulation of Cherry Coke. Totally changed it. It does not settle my stomach anymore. So the 65 grams of sugar in it, pointless. It's just a waste of time. But
Just
God
negative
got me
at
on
this
that
point,
one.
huh? That's great.
I'm happy
He's
to
got
hear
me
you
on
not
that one.
drinking it.
I'm not. I haven't been. Ever since they changed it, it's like, ah, man.
Well, I'm actually happy to hear that because I know how damaging it is.
Oh,
Katie, do you
Still
have
funny,
anything
though.
for us?
Try to no, I don't think so.
I'm going to back you up and say we've kept you past your bedtime. So thank you for hanging with us. I appreciate it. So I'm going to pray us out here, guys. Thank you so much for the time. Are you excited about being a little stronger? I'm excited about being a little stronger. This was a good
I'm doing
time.
a thumbs up.
There it is. Yeah. Father God, thank you so much for the opportunity to spend time together getting stronger. I pray, God, that you'll bless our efforts. Because without you in them, that's all vanity. Let us be stronger of mind, stronger of body, and stronger of spirit. And let your joy be our strength. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 Thank you for joining us for 1% Better today. Don't forget to subscribe for the podcast. Leave us a raving review to tell others how Better Daily has helped you in your journey. If you want more Better Daily, download our app and join our Betterment family at betterdaily.live. Use code POD to get 25% off your subscription. That's POD, all caps, to save 25% on your subscription. We all have a cross to carry. It's lighter when we do it together. Go to betterdaily.live today.